It was a cold spring morning, and the fog outside our Baker Street window made the houses look like dark shapes in a dream. We had just finished breakfast. Holmes sat by the fire with the newspaper's advertisement pages spread on his knee. I watched the gaslight shine on the white tablecloth, the spoons, the cups, little islands of brightness inside a pale yellow room. Holmes had been quiet for a long time, and when he finally spoke, his voice sounded like it came from far away. "Watson," he said, "people love the bang and flash of a crime. But logic is rarer than diamonds. You should write more about the logic." He tossed the newspaper aside and lit his long cherry-wood pipe with a glowing cinder. He did not look at me. He looked into the fire as if the coals were a map only he could read. I answered with a smile I did not quite feel. "I do try," I said. "Yet sometimes it seems your reasoning walks too fast for the average reader." He waved a hand. "That may be true. Still, we must keep our standards. Crime is common, good thinking is not." His tone was firm, but I knew the lecture would end soon. Holmes often used these small storms to clear the air in his mind. Outside, a cart rolled by wheels dull on the wet road. Inside the room was warm and still. The bell rang. Holmes's eyebrows lifted. 10:30, he said. "Our visitor is punctual." He never needed to check a clock. A young lady entered, plain but neat, with a quick face and freckles like light brown dust on her skin. Her manner was brisk, but her eyes showed a quiet worry, as if a thought had followed her all the way from yesterday. "You will excuse me for troubling you," she said. "I have had a very strange experience, and I lack family to advise me. Perhaps you could tell me what I should do." "Please sit, miss." "Hunter, Violet Hunter." Holmes leaned back, fingertips together, eyelids half closed in his usual pose for listening. I liked him best like this, not the impressive showman, not the sharp critic, but the patient machine who took in every detail and turned it into sense. Miss Hunter began her story. For 5 years, she had worked as a governess for Colonel Spence Monroe. When he received an appointment in Halifax, he took the children across the Atlantic, and she suddenly stood without a position. She went to Westaways, a governess agency, week after week. Miss Stoper ran the office now, a hard woman with careful ledgers. Work did not appear. The small savings in Miss Hunter's purse thinned. Her food cupboard grew bare. At last, one visit changed everything. A very stout gentleman sat in Miss Stoper's office that day, smiling so broadly that his eyes were nearly hidden in folds of flesh. He wore glasses and studied each lady who came in like a buyer inspecting fabric. When Miss Hunter entered, he brightened. "Capital, capital," he cried, rubbing his hands. He asked a few quick questions, then declared that her last salary, £4 a month, was rank sweating. He offered something astonishing, £100 a year, and half paid in advance. Here I must pause and guide our learners through language as I would if we were all in the same classroom. Key expression 1 at my wit's end. It means someone feels they have no ideas left and do not know what to do next. Violet was nearly at her wit's end when the offer arrived. Key expression 2. Too good to be true. We use this when an offer is so excellent that we feel it may be suspicious. The salary sounded too good to be true. Key expression 3. Make up one's mind. It means to decide. Violet would soon have to make up her mind. Miss Hunter told us the gentleman's name was Mr. Geoffroy Rucastle. He lived at a country house near Winchester called the Copper Beeches, named for the dark red trees in front. He said there would be one child, a dear little romper of 6, and some light obedience to the wife's little commands. Then came the strange conditions. He and his wife were faddy. Would Miss Hunter wear any dress they gave her? Would she sit here or sit there as asked? And one more thing, would she cut her hair quite short? At this, Violet's hand moved to her chestnut hair as she spoke to us. It is somewhat luxurious and considered artistic, she said, not with vanity, but with a simple knowledge of herself. She told Mr. Rucastle she could not cut it. The man's face clouded for a moment. Then he said that in that case they would consider other candidates. Miss Stoper's mouth tightened. There was commission money at stake, and Violet left the office feeling ill-used and yet unsure. That night she stared at the cupboard with its little store of food. The next day she thought she had been proud. On the third day she was sure of it. Money is not everything, but hunger is a loud voice. She almost returned to Westaways to ask if the vacancy remained when a letter arrived from Mr. Rucastle himself. The offer now rose to £120 a year to recompense her for any small inconvenience. She would wear an indoor dress of electric blue, a dress that belonged to Mr. Rucastle's dear daughter Alice, now in Philadelphia. And yes, her hair must be cut. He would meet her at Winchester by dog cart if she would only let him know her train. As Violet read the letter aloud to us, I felt it a soft pressure under the skin of the words, like a heartbeat you could not ignore. I glanced at Holmes. He sat very still, pipe forgotten between his fingers. "And your mind?" he asked quietly when she had finished. "I have made it up," she said with a brave smile. "I will accept." Holmes gave a small, reluctant nod. "If your mind is made up, that settles it. Yet it is not the situation I would choose for a sister of mine." Miss Hunter's eyes shone with anxiety again. "What is the meaning of it all, Mr. Holmes?" "I have no data," he replied. Still, two facts are clear to any careful observer. He turned his gaze to the window where the fog pressed like yellow wool against the glass. First, the pay is far above the market. Second, the requests concern your appearance and position in a very particular way. The electric blue dress, the short hair where you sit and when you laugh or read. When high pay and precise control. Meet reason, asks why. He did not raise his voice, but the room felt colder. This is a grammar point worth noticing we use when plus presents simple to state a general truth. When high pay and precise control meet reason, asks why. It sounds like a rule, not a one-time event. English learners remember this pattern. It gives your sentence the weight of a principle. Violet, to her credit, did not tremble. I wondered if Mrs. Rucastle might be unwell. Perhaps the family humors her for peace. A possible explanation, Holmes said. But you will forgive me for saying possible is not probable. The hair concerns me most. Hair changes a face. A dress also changes a silhouette. And a chair before a window. His eyes grew distant again. I do not like the look of a man who pays more than he must and asks more than he should. He let the silence sit. Smoke drifted in a fine blue line from his pipe, turning and softening in the lamplight. I decided to give Violet a more practical comfort. "If you are in doubt or danger," I said, "telegraph us. We will come." Holmes nodded. "At any hour." That promise changed Violet's face. She stood straighter. "Then I shall write at once to confirm cut my poor hair tonight and travel to Winchester tomorrow. I will send a telegram if anything seems wrong. Here is a short detective-style exchange to fix the moment in your ear." "Holmes," I murmured as Violet reached for her gloves. "Is she in danger?" "She will need to be brave," he said. "But she is brave." and where courage stands, danger often trips. And you, I pressed. He said, will wait for data. A telegram is more informative than fear. He smiled, then thin and quick, like a line drawn by a fine pen. Violet thanked us and went out with fast steps, the fog swallowing her as the door closed behind her. We listened to the fading tap of her heels on the stairs. The room felt empty without her. Holmes did not speak for a full minute. At last he rose, walked to the window, and rubbed a small circle in the misted glass with the side of his hand. The street beyond was barely visible. She will write, he said simply, and then we shall have our clay for bricks. Learners here is one more language note hidden like a clue we often use would to talk about past habits or repeated actions, especially in storytelling. For example, Holmes would sit for half an hour in silence means he did that often in the past. This does not talk about the future. It paints a pattern of behavior. When you hear it in a detective tale, imagine footsteps you have heard many times before. I poured fresh coffee and he returned to his chair. The fire gave a small sigh and settled. The advertisements lay forgotten where they had fallen. Somewhere in the city, a young woman was buying scissors. Somewhere in the country, a blue dress waited by a bright window. I could not say why, but the three things, the scissors, the dress, the window, linked themselves in my mind, like 3 points of a triangle that made a warning sign. Holmes closed his eyes. "You are frowning, Watson," he said without looking. "Tell me your thought." "It is nothing precise," I admitted. "Only that a man who laughs too hard while telling funny stories may be acting for someone else." Holmes smiled again, and now it reached his eyes. "Excellent. Keep that impression. In a good case, impressions are the soft wax where the first marks appear." We said no more. Outside, the fog began to thin. Inside, the room seemed to breathe. We waited in our warm little island while the world rearranged itself into our next problem. And somewhere under copper beeches, the color of old blood, a house looked down on a road where strangers sometimes stared up. 2 weeks passed. The fogs of London gave way to milder days, and yet inside Baker Street there was an air of waiting, tense but quiet, like a violin string drawn taut but not yet played. Holmes spoke little. He spent long hours by the fire, his eyes distant, his mind clearly traveling south toward Hampshire. Every few days I caught him glancing at the telegraph shelf as though expecting a summons from Violet Hunter. Then one cold night it came. The yellow envelope arrived just as I was about to turn in, and Holmes was at his chemical table preparing to test the purity of acetones. He slit it open with his scalpel, read quickly, and passed it to me. The words were simple and urgent. "Please be at the Black Swan Hotel at Winchester at midday tomorrow. Do come, I am at my wit's end. Hunter." Holmes looked up. "Kindly check Bradshaw for trains, Watson." "There's one at 9:30, I said after a moment. "We'll arrive around 11:30. "That will do very nicely," he replied, putting aside his experiment. "We shall need our wits sharper than these acids tomorrow." The next morning, the countryside rolled past our carriage window in green waves. It was early spring, the fields damp and bright, the sky pale blue scattered with white clouds. Holmes sat buried behind his morning papers until we crossed the Hampshire border. Then he folded them neatly and turned his eyes to the passing landscape. "You see beauty," he said, responding to my admiring sigh. "I see isolation. Every lonely house between those hedges is a stage for secret cruelty. In London, a scream brings neighbors and policemen. In the countryside, it may echo for years unheard." It startled me, as his remarks often did. You think this girl is in danger then? He nodded slowly. Danger comes where secrecy pays well. That was Holmes, always ready to find logic where others found only scenery. At noon, the spire of Winchester Cathedral rose ahead of us. We found Miss Hunter waiting at the Black Swan Inn, her face pale but composed. She had reserved a small private room for us with lunch laid out, though she hardly touched it. "I can't tell you how glad I am that you've come," she began quickly. "I don't know what I should do without your advice. It's all been so strange." Holmes gestured for her to sit and to recount everything from the beginning. His long fingers made a steeple, his eyes half closed, listening not only to her words, but to the spaces between them. She described the Copper Beeches, a large whitewashed house streaked with damp, its front shaded by dark red trees. Behind lay woods belonging to Lord Southerton's preserve. Before it, a lonely road leading to Southampton. Mr. Rucastle himself had driven her there in a cheerful mood, laughing and talking as though he had nothing on his mind but good humor. He introduced her to his family that evening. Mrs. Rucastle, she said, was pale and silent, much younger than her husband, perhaps 30 to his 45. She seemed kind, even gentle, but her eyes wandered constantly between her husband and their only child, a small boy with a strange, overlarge head and a sharp, spoiled temper. Holmes asked softly, "Did the child strike you as cruel?" Violet nodded, reluctant. "He delights in hurting small creatures. I have never met a child so heartless." Holmes's mouth tightened. "That is an inheritance of character. We shall remember it." She continued, "The servants are unpleasant people. Toller the groom always smells of drink, and his wife, tall and grim, keeps silence like a wall. Yet the house runs as if by habit, not order. For 2 days nothing happened. On the third, Mr. Rucastle thanked me for cutting my hair, it was already done before I left London, and asked me to wear the electric blue dress. I found it laid on my bed, perfectly fitted, though clearly used before. When I went down, both he and his wife were waiting in the drawing room, which stretches along the front of the house with 3 tall windows to the floor. A chair had been placed facing away from the central window. I was told to sit there while Mr. Rucastle told me a series of comical stories. He was absurdly funny, rolling with laughter, while Mrs. Rucastle watched me silently, her face pale and anxious. After an hour, he said my duties with the child could begin, and I was free to change. This scene repeated itself several times. She said always the same: the blue dress, the laughter, the position near the window. At last, curiosity overcame her. She had a piece of broken mirror in her handkerchief. Pretending to wipe her eyes as she laughed, she angled it to catch the reflection of what lay behind her. At first, nothing. Then a man in a gray suit stood in the road beyond the fence, gazing intently toward the window. Violet's voice trembled slightly as she told it. I lowered my handkerchief, but Mrs. Rucastle's eyes were on me. She whispered to her husband that an impertinent fellow was staring. He ordered me to wave him away. I obeyed, and she instantly drew down the blind. Since that day, I have not worn the dress or sat in that chair. Holmes's pipe made a small click as he set it down. A man in the road, a blue dress, and a cut of hair. 3 pieces already fit. Go on. Violet nodded. There is more, sir. On my first day, Mr. Rucastle showed me an outhouse near the kitchen. Inside was a fierce mastiff kept chained. Don't ever cross the yard after dark, he said. Old Carlo is let loose every night. 2 nights later, I saw the creature myself by moonlight, huge, silent, and terrifying. And one evening, while arranging my drawers, I found something that made my blood run cold. My lowest drawer was locked. One of my own keys fitted it. Inside lay a coil of chestnut hair exactly like mine. Yet when I checked my trunk, my own hair was still there. 2 identical locks. I replaced it and said nothing. She paused. The room seemed to darken, though the afternoon sun still shone. Since then, I've noticed one part of the house always locked. Yesterday, Toller, drunk as usual, left the key in the door. I slipped inside. The passage led to 3 rooms, 2 empty and dusty, 1 closed and barred with an iron bed rail. A light shone under the door, and I heard footsteps moving inside. I fled and ran straight into Mr. Rucastle. He smiled too kindly, asked what had frightened me, and when I said I'd only wandered by mistake, he warned me. She hesitated and her fingers clenched together. He said if I crossed that threshold again, he would throw me to the mastiff. Holmes leaned forward, eyes bright. So, the mask has slipped. Violet's voice was low now. I could bear no more. I telegraphed you last night and came here this morning under the pretext of buying things for the child. Mr. and Mrs. Rucastle leave the house this afternoon for a visit, and Toller is too drunk to stand. Only Mrs. Toller remains. Holmes rose, pacing slowly. His movements had the rhythm of thought turned physical. We are dealing with an imprisonment, he said. You have been brought to replace someone, most likely Miss Alice Rucastle, the daughter who went to Philadelphia. Your hair, your dress, your laughter in the window, all for an audience outside who must be deceived into thinking she is well and happy. The man in gray was likely her suitor. Violet gasped softly. That explains everything. The letters, the secrecy, the blue dress. Holmes nodded once. Exactly. The rest follows easily: the dog to keep the lover away, the servants to control the house, the drunken groom rewarded for silence. The only question is how much danger remains and whether the girl still lives. He turned to her gravely. You are brave, Miss Hunter, and your conduct has been most sensible. Can you perform one more act? Anything. When the Rucastles leave tonight and Toller lies insensible, send Mrs. Toller into the cellar on some errand and lock the door behind her. We shall arrive by 7. With her out of the way, we can search freely. I'll do it, she said firmly. Holmes smiled, just a flicker of approval. Excellent. Then we shall see the end of this copper mystery. Learners note here how English can turn deduction into rhythm. We often use must have plus past participle to guess about a past event with confidence. For example, Holmes said, "You must have been brought to replace someone." It means he's sure, though he has no proof yet. Try forming your own example. She must have left early. Her coat is gone. This structure is common in detective reasoning. It sounds logical, yet cautious. Another expression: the mask has slipped. It means someone's true nature has been revealed after pretending. When Mr. Rucastle threatened Violet, his mask slipped. Before we left Winchester, Violet pressed Holmes's hand. You'll come, won't you? Whatever happens. At 7, he said, bring courage and leave the rest to logic. She smiled, then a small, tired smile of someone who has finally seen the map of her fear. As the train carried us back toward London, Holmes was silent for many miles. At last, he spoke not to me, but to himself. A caged daughter, a greedy father, and a dog hungry enough to guard a secret. He looked out at the fields where the evening light touched the copper-tinted trees. Watson, there are worse prisons than stone. Some are built from obedience. The road to the copper beeches wound between hedges thick with early spring leaves, their green so fresh it seemed almost fragile. Holmes and I had left our hired trap at a small inn 2 miles back, preferring to approach quietly on foot. The setting sun cast long copper light through the trees ahead, and it was easy to see how the house had taken its name. The mansion itself came into view, suddenly square white and stern, its walls streaked with the weather's gray fingers. Across the front lawn, the famous copper beeches stood like sentinels, their leaves glinting bronze in the fading light. A faint breeze stirred them, and they whispered as if warning us to tread carefully. Violet Hunter was waiting at the door when we arrived. Her face showed both relief and strain, but she greeted us with calm efficiency. "You're here, thank God. Mr. and Mrs. Rucastle have gone. Toller lies drunk in the kitchen, and his wife is locked in the cellar as planned." "Splendid work," Miss Hunter said Holmes warmly. "Now lead us to the sealed rooms." A dull thud echoed from somewhere below Mrs. Toller's protest, muffled by heavy doors. Violet started but steadied herself. "She can't harm us," Holmes assured her. "Now to business." The upper corridor was silent except for the faint creak of floorboards beneath our feet. The air smelled of damp and dust, and our lantern light danced along the whitewashed walls. When we reached the locked passage, Holmes examined the door carefully, his eyes tracing every scratch around the keyhole. "This is recent," he murmured. "The lock has been used often." He cut through the rope, binding the iron bed rail across the center door, and tried several keys from the bunch Violet had taken. None worked. His lips pressed together. "We may need force," he said. "Watson, your shoulder, if you please." The wood splintered on the second try, the old hinges giving way with a groan. Inside was a small bare room, a single pallet bed, a table, and a wicker basket half filled with linen. The skylight above was open, and a faint breeze drifted down. "The prisoner has escaped," Holmes said quickly, his face darkening. "We're too late, or almost." He sprang up onto the bed, then the table, and through the skylight. "Ah, yes, a long ladder rests against the roof. Our man used it to reach her." Miss Hunter clutched my arm. "But that ladder was not there when the Rucastles left." "He has returned," said Holmes grimly, dropping back down. "A clever and desperate man. Listen, footsteps on the stairs." The words had scarcely left his lips when the doorframe filled with the bulky figure of Jeffro Rucastle himself, red-faced and panting, a heavy stick raised in one hand. His eyes flicked from Violet to Holmes, and fury twisted his broad smile into something monstrous. "You spies," he shouted. "You thieves. What are you doing in my house?" Holmes took a step forward, calm as stone. "Where is your daughter, Mr. Rucastle?" The man's eyes darted upward toward the open skylight, and his voice broke into a shriek. "It is for me to ask you that. You think you can come here, break my door, steal my—" His words dissolved into incoherence. Then, with sudden terror, he turned and bolted down the stairs, his heavy feet echoing like thunder. "He's going for the dog," Violet cried. Holmes moved fast. "Watson, your pistol, Miss Hunter, stay back." We raced down the corridor. Below, a door slammed, followed by the dreadful sound of a chain being pulled. Then an explosion of snarling, a scream of agony, and a low, wet growl that turned my stomach cold. When we burst into the yard, the sight was almost unbearable. The great mastiff, all ribs and fury, had hurled itself at its master. Rucastle lay pinned beneath it, his thick neck caught in the dog's jaws. Without thinking, I raised my revolver and fired. The brute dropped instantly, its teeth still clamped in flesh. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Holmes bent over the fallen man. "Alive," he said at last. "Barely." We carried him inside and laid him on the drawing room sofa. I did what I could to stop the bleeding while Holmes dispatched Violet to fetch water. The house was utterly silent, except for Rucastle's faint moans. His eyes rolled back. He was a broken man. Then from the back hall came the sound of a door opening. A tall woman appeared, gaunt, with gray hair scraped back tight. Violet gasped. "Mrs. Toller." The woman curtsied stiffly. "Yes, miss. Mr. Rucastle let me out before he ran up to you." Her voice was hard, but not hostile. "It's a pity you didn't tell me what you were about, for I could have spared you the trouble." Holmes fixed his sharp gaze on her. "Then tell us now, Mrs. Toller. What happened in this house?" The woman nodded, her expression weary. "I'll tell it plain. Miss Alice, Mr. Rucastle's daughter, was never happy here after he married again. She was quiet, patient, but he held her money in trust and wouldn't give her a penny. When she met Mr. Fowler, a sailor he feared losing control, he tried to make her sign her rights away. She refused. He bullied her till she fell ill, brain fever they called it, and when she recovered he kept her locked up, saying she was delicate. That's what you saw, miss, her room barred and shuttered. The blue dress and the hair, you were made to look like her, so her lover would believe she'd turned against him and gone mad." Holmes exhaled softly, the lines of tension easing from his brow. "Just so. And the man on the road was Mr. Fowler himself." Mrs. Toller nodded again. "Aye. When he found me alone one night, he offered good money and better reason to help her escape. We planned it when the master and mistress went out. The ladder was ready. They're gone now, sir, both safe, I reckon." Holmes's smile was brief but genuine. "Then all is well that ends well." Learners pause here a moment. Let's uncover a few English clues. Expression 1, all is well that ends well. This proverb means if the final result is good, the difficulties along the way don't matter. Example, our train broke down, but we still arrived on time, so all's well that ends well. Expression 2, at one's wit's end. You heard it in Violet's telegram. It means being so worried or confused that you don't know what to do. Example, she was at her wit's end trying to fix the problem. Expression 3, break the silence. It means to speak after a long quiet. Example, Holmes finally broke the silence with a question. All three expressions appear naturally in detective stories because they describe tension, worry, and relief. Now, a small grammar clue. Notice how Mrs. Toller used had been and had refused. That's past perfect tense, used to talk about actions that happened before another action in the past. For example, she had refused to sign the paper before he locked her up. This tense is essential in mysteries because detectives often retell what happened before something else happened. When the country doctor finally arrived, he shook his head gravely. "He'll live," he said of Rucastle, "but he'll never be the same." Mrs. Rucastle, white-faced and trembling, hovered beside her husband, too frightened to speak. Holmes turned quietly to Violet. "Our work here is done. Let us leave before gratitude turns to questions of law." We stepped out into the cool evening. The copper beeches rustled gently overhead, their leaves glowing like embers in the last light. Somewhere far away, a church bell struck 8. Holmes breathed deeply, the tension of the day leaving him with each exhale. "You have been remarkable, Miss Hunter, sensible, brave, and clear-headed. Few could have done better." Violet blushed. "You made it possible, Mr. Holmes. I only followed your plan." He gave a faint smile. The best plans require good people to carry them out. Remember that. Later, as we rode back toward Winchester, Holmes leaned against the seat, lost in thought. The train clattered gently, the lamps swaying overhead. It was not a grand case, he said at last, but a human one. Greed, fear, love, the same old trio. I nodded. And logic. He looked at me sideways. Logic is only the map, Watson. It does not make the journey less dangerous, only more direct. Learners, that sentence hides a structure useful for reflection, only more plus adjective. It means something doesn't change one way, but does in another. Example: studying grammar doesn't make you perfect, only better prepared. Try making your own. Reading this story won't make you a detective, only more observant. In Winchester, Holmes sent a brief telegram to Scotland Yard, purely formal, stating that the situation at the Copper Beeches was resolved without need of arrest. Then he turned to me. Come, Watson. We deserve supper and silence. As we walked away from the station lights, I thought of Violet Hunter, the courage in her eyes, the calm in her voice when danger pressed close. I wondered if Holmes admired her as much as I did, but when I asked, he only said she will make an excellent schoolmistress. And I dislike sentiment. It interferes with clear reasoning. He said it lightly, but I knew that behind his detachment there was quiet respect, the kind he never spoke aloud. Many weeks later, I learned that Miss Hunter had indeed become head of a private school in Walsall, where she was both successful and content. As for Mr. Fowler and Miss Alice Rucastle, they married by special license the very next day in Southampton and sailed to Mauritius, far from the shadows of their past. Mr. Rucastle survived his wounds, but was seen no more in society. He lived quietly, dependent on his wife and servants, the same servants who knew too much for him to dismiss. The great house beneath the Copper Beeches grew silent once again, its windows dark, its secrets gone. That night in Baker Street, as I wrote up my notes, Holmes sat by the fire cleaning his pipe. You see, Watson, he said suddenly, evil seldom hides in complexity. It hides in ordinary things, a letter, a laugh, a locked door. He smiled faintly. And now that door is open. Learners, one final reflection in this story: deduction and language share the same heart observation. When you learn a new word, look at it like Holmes would look at a clue. Ask, where did it come from? What does it connect to? What story does it tell? That's how both detectives and language learners find truth in the smallest detail.